Imagine a feast. Not the abundance you know, but a time when food was a daily battle. Forget fresh produce and diverse flavors. In the medieval era, even a simple meal was often a gamble, a stark contrast between meager sustenance and dangerous opulence. Today, we journey back to uncover the grim realities of eating in a time when survival itself was a culinary challenge. For the vast majority across medieval Europe, life revolved around survival, and food was its relentless centerpiece. Picture the table in a peasant's humble dwelling, a coarse, unyielding chunk of bread, perhaps a bowl of thin, bland pottage. This was the unvarying diet that fueled backbreaking labor from dawn until dusk. Spices like cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, or pepper were beyond imagination, luxuries from distant lands that only the wealthiest could ever dream of. Instead, the common folk made do with local pungent flavors, garlic, mustard, or sharp vinegar to attempt to enliven their meager fare. Fresh produce was a fleeting seasonal gift. Without modern preservation, fruits and vegetables appeared briefly, disappearing with the harvest. A fortunate family with a small plot might cultivate hardy onions, leeks, or cabbages, yet these were never enough to balance a diet overwhelmingly reliant on grains. Barley, rye, and wheat formed the very backbone of daily sustenance, transformed into dense breads and gruels. Sometimes legumes like peas and beans offered a slight variation, but the diet remained critically deficient in essential nutrients, leading to widespread malnutrition, stunted growth, and a pervasive lack of vitality. Meat, a prized commodity, seldom graced a peasant's table. A prosperous household might own a pig, some chickens, or even a cow, but these animals were far too valuable for casual consumption. They were currency, labor, or sources of milk and eggs. Meat was typically reserved for grand occasions, like weddings, religious festivals such as Christmas or Easter, or when an animal was too old or infirm to serve any other purpose. When it was available, no scrap was wasted. Organ meats, or offal, were common. Small birds and game caught through traps were also consumed, though venturing into royal forests to poach was a perilous act, punishable by severe penalties. Fish offered a more accessible protein source for those living near rivers or the sea, but it too was often preserved through drying, smoking, or heavy salting to endure lean periods. The resulting herring, cod, and eel, packed in copious salt in barrels, bore little resemblance to the delicate fillets we enjoy today. Freshwater fish, like carp and pike, remained a delicacy for the nobility, who maintained private fish ponds on their vast estates. Even the basic sustenance available to medieval commoners often came with hidden dangers. Imagine a baker in the cramped, dimly lit streets of a medieval town. The harvest has been poor, grain prices have skyrocketed, and desperation sets in. To survive, the baker might secretly mix fillers into his precious flour, ground acorns, chalk, or even sawdust. The resulting bread, a staple of every meal, would be coarse, gritty, and offered little in the way of true nourishment. It transformed from a life-sustaining food into another hardship to endure. This deceit extended beyond bread. Ale and wine, consumed widely by young and old alike in an age when clean drinking water was a luxury, were frequently tampered with. An alewife, struggling to make ends meet, might water down her brew to increase profits. The resulting drink was often thin, sour, and bore scant resemblance to a hearty, full-bodied ale. This practice not only defrauded customers, but also highlighted a grim necessity. Diluted though it was, the alcohol in these beverages offered a measure of protection against harmful bacteria found in contaminated water sources. Peasants often faced a choice between the risk of disease from tainted water or the empty calories of a watered-down brew. Medieval authorities were aware of these deceptive practices. In England, the Assay of Bread and Ale, a 13th century law, established strict regulations on the weight, price, and quality of these essential goods. Transgressors faced harsh fines or public humiliation, such as being paraded through the streets with their shoddy products.
However, enforcement was often lax, and the sheer desperation of producers frequently outweighed the fear of punishment. These laws did little to stem the tide of adulteration, leaving the common person to constantly compromise between gnawing hunger and the bitter disappointment of compromised food. Every mouthful became a stark reminder of their precarious existence, where even the most fundamental sustenance could not be taken for granted. Beyond scarcity and deception, medieval diners faced an even more insidious threat: rampant unsanitary conditions. Imagine a peasant cottage in a village, its thatched roof barely warding off the winter chill. Inside, a family huddles, sharing their meager living space not just with each other, but often with their livestock. A pig might root around on the dirt floor, its grunts a constant backdrop to daily life. Animals were kept indoors for warmth and protection, but their waste inevitably mingled with the straw and rushes covering the floor, creating a fertile breeding ground for disease-carrying fleas, lice, and rodents. Even within the stone walls of grand castles, sanitation remained a formidable challenge. Without any scientific understanding of germs or food safety, contamination was widespread. The fate of King John serves as a grim historical anecdote. In 1216, during a military campaign, King John reportedly fell violently ill after overindulging in peaches and newly brewed cider in the town of Lynn. Historians largely attribute his death to a fatal case of dysentery, almost certainly exacerbated by spoiled fruit. In the bustling, crowded cities of medieval Europe, the situation was even more dire. Narrow streets overflowed with garbage and human waste, tainting the air and seeping directly into water sources. London's River Thames, for instance, served simultaneously as a primary source of drinking water and a dumping ground for the city's refuse. It is hardly surprising that foodborne illnesses were rampant, sickening both commoners and nobility alike. The very air, believed to carry disease through noxious miasmas, became a palpable threat.
The Black Death, which devastated Europe in the 14th century, wiping out an estimated 1/3 of the population, spread with terrifying efficiency thanks to these unsanitary conditions. Rats, thriving in the filth, carried infected fleas, which in turn transmitted the deadly bacterium Yersinia pestis to humans. Food markets, bustling hubs of activity with flies buzzing around meat stalls and rodents scurrying underfoot, were particularly notorious breeding grounds for pestilence. It truly is a wonder that anyone survived the perilous realities of medieval dining. For the average peasant, there was little escape from these conditions. They lived and died amidst the filth, their bodies already weakened by malnutrition and constant exposure to disease. In medieval Europe, the tolling of church bells marked not just the hours, but the very rhythm of life, including what people ate. The Catholic Church wielded immense influence, and its dietary mandates permeated every social stratum. Central to these were frequent fasting and meatless days, most notably during the penitential season of Lent. For 40 days before Easter, the faithful were expected to abstain from meat, dairy, and eggs. For the already struggling peasantry, this was an extraordinary burden. Consider a peasant family, toiling tirelessly on their small plot of land, barely coaxing enough sustenance to feed themselves and their children. When Lent arrived, they faced a daunting spiritual and physical challenge: honor the church's decree and further weaken their malnourished bodies, or risk eternal damnation. They often chose faith, subsisting on meager portions of bread, pottage, and perhaps some dried fish. By Easter, their faces were gaunt, their steps heavy with exhaustion, yet they found solace in the belief of heavenly reward for their suffering. The stricture against meat extended beyond Lent too, with Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays often designated as lean days. For the wealthy, this might mean substituting fish and other luxuries. For the poor, it often meant going without any animal protein at all. Despite these added hardships, the church was not entirely deaf to the plight of the impoverished. Monasteries and abbeys, often possessing extensive lands and resources, served as crucial sources of food aid. Monks, bound by vows of charity, distributed bread and alms to the needy, offering a rare respite from gnawing hunger.
The 12th century mystic Saint Hildegard of Bingen, for example, a renowned abbess and herbalist, oversaw her abbey's extensive bakery, producing high-quality spelt bread distributed to the sick and poor in her community. Her advocacy for spelt as a healthier grain, remarkably prescient, offered a glimpse into more mindful nutrition even then. Yet even this charity had its limits. When widespread crop failures or famines, such as the Great Famine of 1315 to 1322 that ravaged Europe, struck, the demand for aid often overwhelmed the church's capacity. And for those desperate enough to poach game from royal or church forests to supplement their meager diets, the church's mercy was conspicuously absent. Poachers, if caught, faced severe, often brutal punishments, regardless of their circumstances. The church's influence on medieval food was therefore a double-edged sword, offering solace and aid to some while imposing additional, often severe burdens on others.
In stark, glittering contrast to the widespread hardship of the peasantry stood the medieval feast of the nobility. These were not merely meals, they were extravagant displays of wealth, status, and power. Imagine the great hall of a lord's castle alive with the flickering light of countless candles. Tapestries depicting heroic deeds adorned the walls, and the air was thick with the rich aroma of saffron, cinnamon, and cloves. Spices so precious they were often literally worth their weight in gold. At the head of a massive oak table, groaning under an unimaginable weight of dishes, the lord and lady presided over a scene of opulent revelry. Whole roasted pigs, their skins crackling and golden, jostled for space with platters of delicately spiced peacock or even roast swan. Baskets overflowed with finely baked manchet bread, a stark contrast to the peasants' coarse loaves. In the cavernous castle kitchens, a royal cook orchestrated a symphony of culinary creation. This master chef, a figure of significant skill, barked orders at underlings, scurrying to baste meats, stir rich sauces, and meticulously plate elaborate subtleties, sugar sculptures crafted into fantastical shapes of castles or mythical beasts. For the royal cook, this feast was a chance to showcase artistry and ingenuity, solidifying reputation and favor with their lord. As the feast progressed, nobles gorged themselves on an endless parade of dishes: tender roast venison, creamy almond soups, delicate blancmange. They washed it all down with goblets of richly spiced wine and frothy ale from Burgundy. Yet, even amidst this gluttonous celebration, the perils of medieval dining were never far. A noblewoman might suddenly excuse herself, her stomach churning from the richness, or a knight, his teeth rotting from sugary delicacies, might wince from biting into an overly tough piece of meat. Food poisoning was a common occurrence, with spoiled meats and rancid sauces taking their toll on even the most privileged stomachs. The sheer volume of food consumed could also lead to painful digestive issues, a reminder that even the elite were not immune to the hazards of an era without refrigeration or robust hygiene standards. Hovering at the edges of the hall, the serving staff watched these excesses with a mixture of envy and quiet resentment. They knew that tomorrow they would return to their usual fare of coarse bread and thin gruel. The memory of the feast, a taunting reminder of the vast gulf between their world and that of their masters. As we reflect on the harsh realities of food in medieval times, the scarcity, the monotonous blandness, the omnipresent dangers of adulteration and disease, and the stark inequalities, it's impossible not to feel a profound sense of gratitude for the abundance and variety we enjoy today. Our modern supermarkets brim with fresh produce from around the globe. Our meats are safely processed and sanitized, and our spice racks hold flavors that would have been the envy of any medieval monarch, even King Richard II.
Consider a medieval peasant, somehow transported to a modern grocery store. The sheer variety would be overwhelming. The vibrant colors of the produce section, the gleaming refrigerated cases filled with milk and eggs, the endless aisles of packaged meals and snacks. It would seem like stepping into a fairy tale.
a land of unimaginable plenty where the specter of famine, so constant in their lives, simply doesn't exist. They might marvel at fruits from South America, spices from the Orient, and cheeses from the Alps, all readily available. Yet, even as we savor the fruits of modernity, we can't help but marvel at the resilience and ingenuity of our ancestors. They made do with so little, finding creative ways to preserve food through salting, smoking, and drying. They cultivated hardy crops, developed brewing techniques that made water safer to drink, and found solace and community in shared, if meager, meals. They adapted, they endured, and through their struggles, they laid the foundation for the advancements we now take for granted. So the next time you sit down to a meal, take a moment to truly appreciate the bounty before you. Savor the flavors and textures that medieval peasants could only dream of. Raise a glass, or perhaps a humble wooden cup, to the countless generations who toiled and struggled, whose daily battles against hunger ultimately brought us to this point of culinary privilege. And if you ever find yourself grumbling about a less than perfect dish, spare a thought for the medieval diner, for whom even a simple, coarse bowl of pottage was often a hard-won blessing, a testament to unwavering human spirit in the face of unrelenting hardship. We are the fortunate inheritors of centuries of culinary progress, and in that, we find both gratitude and the enduring power of history's lessons.